He stormed into the janitor's closet to end a life he thought was beneath him, but when a soft, innocent voice answered instead. What she said shook the foundations of everything he believed about success, love, and legacy. If you enjoy life-changing tales that strike the heart and twist the soul, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories. Asterisk, he was the kind of man who walked like the world belonged to him because, in many ways, it did. Michael St. James, 41-year-old CEO of Orion Tech International, a multi-billion-dollar empire that dominated everything from cloud computing to pharmaceutical logistics. A man raised on Wall Street instincts and hardened in boardroom wars, one who believed mercy, whose weakness and time was money. So when he received an email about a janitor taking unscheduled breaks and letting his daughter roam the 40th floor executive wing, he didn't bother calling HR or setting up a meeting. He marched right down in his tailored Armani suit, Rolex, gleaming like a badge of his ruthlessness, ready to fire the janitor on the spot. No appeals, no excuses, just a cold "you're done." But as he flung open the janitor's supply closet with the fury of a god descending from Olympus, what greeted him wasn't some ragged old man cowering in guilt, but a little girl, no older than 7, sitting cross-legged on a worn blanket with a lunchbox in her lap and a book titled How Stars Are Born open before her. Her wide hazel eyes looking up at him, not in fear but in curiosity. "Are you the mean man everyone's afraid of?" she asked, and for a moment he forgot what he came there to do. Her words disarmed him like a gentle slap to the face, making him blink in confusion before saying, "Where's your father?" And she calmly pointed to the hallway, explaining, "He's fixing a pipe in the women's bathroom. He said I could wait here with my Galaxy book." Then she added softly, "Are you the boss that said people like Daddy don't matter?" And that did it like a punch to the soul. Those words echoed in the vast chambers of his hollowed heart. Because once upon a time, he was a child in a supply closet too, hiding while his mother cleaned the night shifts in corporate offices just like this one. And back then, he'd promised himself he would never be poor again. Never weak, never helpless, but in becoming powerful, he had trampled everything human in him. Shaken, he muttered something about a misunderstanding and walked away. But he couldn't shake her voice, her eyes, her fearless honesty. So instead of returning to his office, he wandered to the security room and pulled up surveillance footage of the janitor and his daughter from the past week, watching them in their quiet routine, her waiting patiently, reading, drawing, occasionally showing her father pictures she made of stars and moons and a big man with a shiny watch. Him and he watched the janitor work tirelessly, never idle, always careful to keep his daughter safe and out of the way, eating lunch on the floor like they didn't deserve a proper table. And something inside him cracked like a glacier giving way. He couldn't sleep that night, haunted by memories of his mother scrubbing floors with blistered hands and whispering, "Someday you'll wear a suit and people will listen to you." But he had turned into the very thing she feared, a man who judged worth by job titles and quarterly earnings. So the next morning, instead of sending a termination email, he asked his assistant to invite the janitor and his daughter to his office. And when they arrived, the girl smiled wide and said, "Hi, Mr. Mean Boss." And her father turned red, mortified, but Michael laughed at real, unforced laugh he hadn't felt in years and said, "Call me Michael." Then he bent down to her level and asked what her dream was, and she said without hesitation, "To be the first astronaut to paint the moon." And he blinked back tears before looking at her father and saying, "You're not in trouble. In fact, I owe you both an apology." And the man, Mr. Ruiz, looked stunned, asking why. And Michael replied, "Because I forgot that the people who hold the building together matter just as much as those who sit at the top of it." Then he did something unthinkable. He walked them to the executive cafeteria, ordered food for them, and sat down with janitor and child like they were equals. And it was the first of many lunches, because that moment marked a change in him, deeper than any corporate shift, and he began spending less time in meetings and more time walking the halls, talking to custodians, interns, receptionists, asking what they needed, what they dreamed about, and slowly word spread that the heartless CEO had a heart after all, but it wasn't just kindness. He restructured the employee benefits plan, added childcare options, launched a scholarship program in the company's name, with the first recipient being a 7-year-old girl named Sophia Ruiz, who got front row seats at NASA's Houston training center a year later thanks to a personal call Michael made using every ounce of influence he had, and when she turned 8, he gave her a telescope engraved with the words, "To the first astronaut who'll paint the moon, keep reaching." And the day she hugged him and said, "You're not mean anymore," something in him healed that no amount of money ever could. But the story didn't end there 3 years later. Michael was diagnosed with a rare degenerative disease that affected his speech and mobility, and the board began whispering about succession plans. But instead of clinging to power, he called a company-wide meeting and, with a trembling voice, announced he was stepping down not to fade away, but to lead a new philanthropic arm of the company, one that built schools, funded space education, and offered second chances to people like his mother, like Mr. Ruiz, like little Sophiand. When asked what inspired the shift, he smiled faintly and said, "A child told me I was mean, and I believed her," and everyone laughed, but his eyes were wet with truth. In the final chapter of his life, he wrote a memoir titled The Janitor's Daughter, which became a bestseller and was later adapted into a film that won hearts across the globe. And at the premiere, an older Sophia walked the red carpet in a NASA cadet uniform, holding his hand, saying, "He taught me that stars aren't only in the sky. Some wear suits and forget they shine." And he, now in a wheelchair, squeezed her fingers with pride, because in changing her life, she had saved his. Michael St. James died peacefully at 58, the picture of Sophia's childhood painting of the moon in his hands blue, yellow, and filled with hope, and the company he built now stood not just as a tech giant, but as a monument to empathy. All because one little girl in a janitor's closet had the courage to speak truth to power. Subscribe now for more stories where simple moments change everything. Asterisk.